I don't remember the last time I've played a game like Dungeons of Hinterberg. And honestly, if I did, it'll probably be a while before I do again. Not trying to be cynical, of course, but I'm just saying that this game touched me in a way that I don't think any game has, at least not for a while. It made me super reflective of my own life. Not my whole life, but just the life I've been leading as an adult. I'm 31 years old, and in the field I want to work in, which is cool, but something always felt missing. You'd probably think it's love as a first thought, and to be frank, that's fair. I'm single as hell. While I desire that, I'm not in a big rush to have a girlfriend just yet, since my focus has largely been on my career. That said, it's not like I'm not trying out here. Come on, a homie has to try. No, actually, it has more to do with me focusing so hard on my career and worrying about my skill set, worrying about my worth, worrying about the future, and all of that. So when I started playing this game and Louisa, the protagonist, was also expressing similar sentiments, including burnout and a lack of motivation, I felt connected immediately. Guess you could say I played Dungeons of Hinterberg at just the right time in my life. The long and short of Dungeons of Hinterberg is that Louisa, who works in law, comes to Hinterberg for a vacation and a general change of pace from her career path, which she's unsatisfied with. While in Hinterberg, it is revealed to us, not her since she apparently knew already, that Hinterberg has had an explosion of tourism due to monsters and dungeons suddenly appearing on the outskirts of town and the appearance of magic. The thing I love the most about the story is less about the general plot, although that is really good too, and more about the vibes and how slow it is. Or at least how slow you want it to be, since you can choose the pace at which you tackle the story. Much like Alex, one of the characters you meet, tells Louisa to do, the game takes its time and is overall pretty chill and relaxing. When I opened this review with what I said earlier, I wasn't just being introspective for introspective's sake. I was actually just heavily immersed into the world Microbird Games crafted. It also told me the very thing I actually wanted that I couldn't quite put my finger on that I was hinting at earlier. Simply put, I need a vacation. Not a staycation, not a drive to another town, but a vacation that takes me somewhere across the world for like a month if I'm being greedy, where I can just simply exist, breathe, be mindful, and be present. This is something that Dungeons of Hinterberg does very well in its story, despite there being something more serious going on in the underbelly of the story. I mean, you can't really have a story about monsters and dungeons and have it all be sunshine and rainbows all the time. But when the game does give you the quieter moments in the open areas where Louisa just stares out into the horizon or chills by a pond and talks to herself, not only are we, the players, getting to know her better, but we're also just vibing with her and soaking it all in. Gameplay-wise, you enter an open area where you can go to different dungeons in it, and you're welcome to just wander about, pick up some random items that you find on the ground, fight some enemies if you're strong enough to handle them, and you have the choice of, do I want to go through the portal into the dungeon? The door to the dungeon? Or do I want to sit over here by the lake and just spend the rest of the time we have in this area for this day? Because it follows Persona logic, your morning is taken up by dungeon stuff. And then the afternoon is taken up by whatever you decide to do in town, that kind of thing. So you can choose to just sit there and listen to Louisa ramble, take in the beautiful music and all that, and it's great, honestly, genuinely great. The closest comparison besides Persona I can give that feeling when you're actually sitting there letting her vibe is like the safe room in Resident Evil or a bonfire in Dark Souls, where you can just breathe. The enemies can't get you right there. You're just chilling. Doing so doesn't just give you a moment of respite though, or respite. I don't remember how to pronounce that word. It also benefits you with stat benefits. Depending on where you're resting, it can increase Louisa's amusement, her familiarity, and etc. Once again, shouting this out because I can't talk about it enough. Throw in that fantastic soundtrack that just screams vibing. And even in the upbeat tempo versions of those pieces, you've got a recipe for just, man. I know I'm about 5 minutes into this review and I haven't really said much about the game itself beyond the vibes and beyond the Persona comparisons and stuff like that. I was very light talking about that, but I just really wanted to emphasize that this game is a vibe. That's about it. As for my views on the story itself, to sum it up, without spoiling, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, general vibes aside. Don't let the exterior of what's going on in the town and all that fool you. It gets real the further you get into the story, but I won't spoil it beyond saying the typical things, I would say. There are shenanigans. Shenanigans, I say. I've already disjointedly explained some of the aspects of the gameplay earlier, but I'll go into more detail here. Dungeons of Hinterberg is an action-adventure game with some light, and I mean light, RPG mechanics. It also, again, has some inspiration from Persona, or takes inspiration from Persona. So you have things like confidant / social links. It depends on which one you played. You know, some of you played 4, some of you played 5. A lot of you probably played 5 and didn't go back to 4. You get my point. Anyway, you can build relationships with various characters for world building and for the stat and skill benefits that come from bonding and becoming friends with other characters. And sometimes it's not just stat and skill benefits. Sometimes you get things that fundamentally change the way you play the game, like a combo extender or different abilities to use in combat, upgrading your weapons and your gear. Like that is locked behind certain characters. So you might want to prioritize being friends with certain characters over others, but that depends on you because there isn't a time limit. Despite how the game feels when you're playing it, when it's counting day by day by day, you don't have a time limit. So you should really try to get to know as many people as possible or as many people as you want to and not worry about that. If you want to spend more time building friendships and stuff like that, by all means. The game doesn't end until you complete all 25 dungeons anyway. Speaking of the dungeons, they are pretty damn good and very distinct from one another. The way it breaks down is you enter a new area, new region of the area around Hinterberg, interact with a skill shrine to get that region's exclusive magic, then you start doing dungeons. Or you chill and vibe, like I was saying earlier. Each dungeon has a different gear level though, so make sure your offensive and defensive gear is on point. That said, I wouldn't describe this game as particularly difficult in the combat or puzzle department, though some of the later dungeon puzzles can be very challenging, at least for me. Dungeons typically break down between combat focus and puzzle focused, and after a while you'll get the hang of determining which dungeon is which. You won't be able to tell until you actually get into the dungeon, but once you do, the layout will kind of give it away. Okay, there's not as many big areas like circles or squares or whatever fighting arenas you would determine as fighting arenas. If there aren't as many of those, assume it's a puzzle, unless it's very blatantly obvious that's a puzzle dungeon. And if you do find yourself fighting a lot after like maybe the first minute or two you're in there, it's likely a more combat focused dungeon. By the way, don't sleep on the combat in this game because while it isn't difficult, it can get busy. Mechanically though, the game is very hack and slash based with a dodge roll and spells and skills that you can use. The spells and skills and new enemy types you'll encounter are what keep the game fresh, so feel free to change up your combat skills. You can't change your spells though because they're locked to the region you're in. I really enjoyed the combat of the game and how nicely everything fell into place. Like the spells are a little unorthodox, but I really like that about them because like in the first area you ever go to, you have like these weird metal spells. You only get 2 per zone, by the way. So like, well, 2 of them, but they have multiple uses, that kind of thing. But in the first zone, you get a bomb, a metal bomb you can kind of just drop and blow up obstacles with or blow up enemies with. And you get a ball and chain, which can be used for enemies as well as puzzles. So yeah, I can't say I had any particular moment in this game that actually frustrated me. So if it wasn't obvious before, then I'll be blunt about it now. This game is a go for it. It's very cozy, mostly, again, shenanigans occur. Beautiful to look at. Actually, I want to talk about that real quick. Honestly, when I saw the trailer for this game at, I think it was a Summer Games Fest or the Game Awards, one of them, I don't know. I genuinely don't remember. Either way, I thought it looked kind of messy and oversaturated. And granted, some of the animations in the game can be a little stiff, and Louisa has an almost permanent smile on her face unless she's actually shocked or angry at something and the situation calls for her to frown. But my main concern was the color palette. I just thought it had too much going on from a visual standpoint. It looked cluttered, visually speaking. Not with the UI, but just like, it looked like you took a bucket of paint, several buckets of paint, and just splashed them, cell shaded it, and said, yeah, look at that. It just, in the video, in the initial trailer I saw, I thought, ooh, this looks a little too much. It just looked too much for me. Well, playing the game myself on my computer without YouTube compressing the crap out of the stream, and I am floored with how gorgeous the game is. Who would have thought? Maybe you shouldn't just judge a game's visuals based on a trailer shown through a stream being streamed through YouTube. Yeah, it gets messy. Anyway, YouTube criticisms aside, the game is gorgeous. But yeah, Dungeons of Hinterberg, I almost said Dungeons and Dragons, is a cozy, beautiful, surprisingly challenging, on occasion, game with a really solid story. And I think you should play it. Dungeons of Hinterberg is available on PC, GeForce Now, Xbox Series S and X, as well as Xbox Cloud Gaming for $30. Now if you'll excuse me, it's about time I pack up my bags and go see the world myself. Not really though, I'm still stuck where I am until I can afford to actually go on vacation or in an actual vacation trip, so for now I'll settle for watching a live stream of somebody walking through Kyoto or something and live vicariously through that. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed your stay. I'm TUSDarryl, and I'll catch you guys next time. Later.